This is the Requiem Metal Podcast, episode 67, Dissection, the Somberlain.
We just heard Black Horizon on the Requiem Metal Podcast.
And we're doing...
I'm Mark.
I'm Jason.
And this is the mighty Dissection.
The Somberlain.
The Somberlain.
And we decided to approach Dissection as honorable as we could, because they're a band that's very deserving of it. I mean, they really did put out 2 almost undisputed masterpieces in the mid-90s and then disappeared because they had to, unfortunately, because of legal troubles with John Nodvide.
Well, it came before that a little bit. He got wrapped up into, I forget the guy's name, where he ended up doing that really half-assed ambient stuff.
Oh.
That was post-Storm of Lights Bane.
Was it?
Yeah.
See, I don't even know if I was even aware of that at the time.
Yeah, because he was just getting involved with these other people. I forget what the hell the guy's name was now. It's all... Look up... I don't know if it's in Lords of Chaos, but it's on the internet someplace. It doesn't really pertain too much to this episode, so we didn't really go into it a whole lot.
But I guess how we decided to approach Dissection was to... we talked about doing a Dissection show where we, pick...
Just a single show.
Choice tracks off of these 2 records and kind of ignore the Renkos. Not that it's a bad record, but it certainly doesn't...
It's an unneeded record.
Yeah, and it doesn't really hold up to these 2.
Not at all.
It sounds more like a kind of a...
It's like a one last fling with a girlfriend or something.
Yeah, it's like a Dark Tranquility, like, B-side record or something. It's weird. I think the only song on there that I really, really dug was the one about the dragon. Black Dragon or something like that.
Yeah, he was in all of his goofy philosophy stuff before he,
offed himself.
But
so...
He was my age.
Was he?
It's a crying shame. He had a whole life to live,
Dang, it's a shame, and we'll talk a little bit more about that probably near the end of the show, or if not this show, then the next one that we do. But we decided to break it up into a 2-part Hall of Fame episode, essentially, that each of these records is deserving in a sense of sort of Hall of Fame-like status, because the amount of variety and the musicality of each song, there's really not a clunker on either of these 2 records.
And we were kind of hard-pressed outside of, maybe cutting out a couple little Svetlut interludes. It's kind of hard to cut any songs out of the thing.
Yeah.
And with how dense, the record's, it's dense, but it's not, it's dense and it's super technical, but not in the sense of like Dream Theater or Cynic. Yeah. It's super technical, but never at the expense of melody.
Sure, yeah. The whole thing is just drenched in melody, and that's what made Dissection so unique. In that, you had the Swedish metal kind of template that was there with the Stockholm sound, and then certainly this other kind of weird thing was emerging with Grotesque, with Tampa, who went on to form At the Gates, and then of course Kristen Wallen, who did Liars in Wait and actually has a pretty strong Dissection connection, which we'll get to in a second. But they were doing something a little bit different than obviously the Stockholm sound, and then here came Dissection, which was, I guess, Dan Swano, when he talks about this record, claims that it's a pure death metal record, that there's no black metal influence on it. Dissection looked the part of black metal in a certain sense with some of the corpse paint and then the bullet belts and the body armor and all that kind of stuff.
Upside down crosses in the back and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then, not John Nydved, who's the vocalist and the kind of lead rhythm guitarist, alongside, you already mentioned...
John Svetlut,
who's the other guitar player, and then Peter Pollendahl is the bass player.
Oli Oman.
Yeah, that's a fun one to say. He just looks sweet, and if you get a chance to see the Somberlain, you look through some of the photos. The photo of Ole is pretty creepy. It's like, it's got the same feel as Dead from Mayhem,
Yeah, minus the blown off head kind of thing.
But he's got cornroll, stuff. It's pretty funny.
And actually, the end, I think last year before, put out really nice reissue double disc sets of both the Somberlain and Storm of Lights
Bane. So this evening you'll be spending, or morning, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, You'll be spending some time with the Somberlain, and again, if in a certain way, if you weren't into metal in the 90s, there's a good chance you may not be into Dissection as much as maybe people like you or I are.
Or at least if you are, it's usually with Storm. people are more familiar, because that was kind of that was like, the Slaughter of the Soul for,
Sure. That was
these guys.
that was like one of that might have been the first actual black metal gem that I ever bought. Mm-hmm. Well, if you call it black metal.
Well, disputed. I mean, titles alone, it's, I think between Dissection and At the Gates, there were two incredibly unique forces because really nobody quite nobody brought exactly those elements together.
Yeah.
And especially on the Somberlain, you're going to hear a lot of Red in the Sky kind of, not necessarily similar sounds necessarily, but approaches to music.
Sure.
Stuff that was like a lot of mashup of like thrash with, I think, black metal tendencies and the minor chord stuff. I think that's where the big comparison comes along. But as far as like the minor chords but epic songwriting and the is in like Metallica type thrash, how every song was like this triumphant, huge epic adventure kind of thing.
Well, and I mean, you definitely just heard that in Black Horizons. I mean, 8 minutes long.
Yeah.
I mean, it's meandering into just kind of different melodic movements, and Ole's like propelling it like with this sort of, I don't know, call it storm blast, but this just blasting kind of burst of energy that adds like a level of like black metal propulsion, I think, to the music in a sense. But yet it's still musically and melodically rooted in sort of the thrash and kind of twin lead kind of stuff that wasn't part of black metal. That was more part of thrash or death metal or even.
And he really never, Ole never gets too faster than like say like a early era creator. Drumming. We never go into like full on blasts. If it is just like this little like spurt, it's not like the songs are just peppered with like a hellhammer beat or something where it's just like Freezing Moon or something, or just blasting through. But
would you say that he does a little bit, or he hints at more of that stuff on Storm though? Because Storm to me is ultimately just a much faster record. It doesn't.
It's stripped. I mean, it's
the melodies sort of like are kind of grinding in there, but it's like it's up against a wall of sound a lot more. I
think it's a more mature record. They took. I think Somberlain could have made two great records with all those riffs. Yeah. But I think it's just a more refined record.
Many riffs coming at you, and that's where the comparison you and I were talking about, the Red in the Sky from At the Gates. Red in the Sky is ours, the kind of first full length At the Gates record, which to some people is very like kind of hard to penetrate on some level because there's so much kind of music coming at you in every song, and so many solos and so many melodies, and I love it. I like drenching in it in a way, but the first time I heard it was tough.
It's a bizarre record. Yeah. And then, with Fear is even harder.
Yeah, that's
true. And it has even more of a payoff, I think, now. But
yeah. And so Somberlain for me was a tough record to penetrate because of that. Because I was one of those people you're referring to who went backwards. Storm of Light's Bane, I got sophomore in high school. It was right when I had actually met Chris, and he had gotten me the UHF VHF Relapse Nuclear Blast compilation.
Oh, that's right before they parted ways.
Yeah. And that was a cool compilation because they had Morphus doing Light My Fire. I had the first Meshuggah songs that I heard, but more importantly, the two Ds were on there: Dismember on Frozen Fields, and then Dissection. I think it was Night's Blood was on there, so. And those were like the first two gems I bought post after was Massive Killing Capacity and Storm of Light's Bane. So
now was your Storm of the Lith's Bane? I've actually got the misspelled one.
Nope. Mine is Storm of the Light's Bane, although I did have the Storm of the Lith's Bane poster in my room.
I don't know how that got by, but...
yeah, we'll have to tell that story when we do Storm of the Light's Bane. It's kind of a funny one. But so, then I had to go backwards and get the Somberlain, which wasn't a problem because you and Brian talked so much about it, and I think even Chris, to some extent, talked a little bit about it.
Well, and this was one of those things, like, the original one came out of No Fashion.
Yeah.
And,
which is a great label.
Really good label. And No Fashion was purely mail order, at least back in the day. So this was something that you had to really seek out, and it was like $23 postpaid or something ridiculous like that. So this was definitely, it was like, kind of cherished experience to order this thing and then get it and then have it pay off so well. Yeah. That was the huge part.
Well, you order it too, and the aesthetics of it are pretty unique. Kristen Wallen does a cover and it's not one of his best.
Well, it actually, Nordveit and Wallen came up with the concept for the cover.
Oh, did they?
Which...
Do we know what the Somberlain is yet? I can't remember. Did we even
I've never even bothered reading lyrics.
Huh. Yeah, I don't even know.
I could probably sing all the lyrics to the album because I've heard it so many damn times, but it doesn't penetrate into like I don't really think about
a greater meaning. Well, the other odd thing, and I'm looking at the reissue, but I also have the...
I mean, if you want to be literal about it, if it's, the sad road, I don't know.
Is that what it is?
I don't know. But it's not Lane, it's Lain.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, the Somberlain. But...
It was just a dude in a chariot with or not a chariot, but like a what is it, like some kind of Victorian cab buggy with two horses?
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that the Val Lewton flick with Boris Karloff, the Body Snatcher, or I think that's what it's called, the Body Snatcher.
Or Bedlam. He was in both of those.
Yeah, no, this is where he goes out and like digs up graves, and he's he drives like a horse and carriage around and digs up bodies for like medical.
That's Body Snatcher.
Yeah, so that's what I think of when I see this cover. Kind of has that like sort of 50s or 40s horror film.
Well, for the time, the cover is pretty standout different.
Oh, it's purple. The original was had like a purple hue to it. I mean, the color scheme was all...
Well, the Wallen really kind of worked monochromatically. If you go back and look at a lot of his stuff, even his like Diabolite covers, and I'm trying to think of some of the other.
Blaze My Sorrow was all silver.
Yeah, or Wild Honey. I mean, he was definitely into the monochromatic scheme. So I think that kind of saved the rather kind of weird rendering of the horses and the dude. But
yeah, because I think if it had been a full color, it'd come off looking like a late '90s power metal cover or something like that.
Like a Halloween cover. If you would have thrown like a pumpkin someplace in the thing.
Yeah, he's tossing pumpkins at you. So aesthetically, it already sort of jumps out to you as being unique, and then the fact that it's from Sweden, and yet people put it into the black metal category, which there weren't too many outside of Marduk. There weren't too many like mainstream kind of Swedish black metal bands in 1993.
Well, and
Dark
technically,
Funeral, Necrophobic.
Yeah, technically, back in the day, nobody called them a black metal band.
No,
that was a later convention, the Black Death thing. Then that came out.
Where did that come from then? I mean, I guess.
Well, you've got Dissection, Unanimated,
Naglfar,
Dawn. That whole, which I guess just because they use minor chords and the singing's more
harsh.
I guess more black metal-ish.
More screaming, less like the guttural.
Less guttural, I guess. But I mean, At the Gates was doing the same thing. So
yeah, because
the categories are just for journalists.
I hear so much of John's vocals, and I think of Tampa. I mean, from At the Gates, not like a it's Fenrez or something. Yeah, it's like Nocturnal Culta.
Cut out, just take the highs and the super lows out of Tampa's thing, and you've got Nordveit.
Yeah,
he's kind of a mid-range. He's not the most dynamic vocalist, but he doesn't need to be because the music shines so much,
dynamic. Yeah, exactly. Black Horizons also, speaking of vocals, had that sweet Dan Swano scream.
Yeah.
In it, the power metal scream,
which he also reprises in the Catatonia EP.
Yeah.
What is it? Jehovah Math, the Northern Sky song.
Oh yeah, that's true. And then it's also him kind of doing some melodies in it too.
The harmonizing.
Yeah,
that's in
he's
there?
doing some harmonizing and stuff. So, that's the other thing. This was produced with a great death metal producer of the day.
It's kind of the height of Unison. I mean, he seems like he really, and you can tell the amount of like love that he put into the production of the thing. He was totally 100% behind this.
He says it's the best thing he's ever produced, according to Ekeroth's Swedish death metal book. He says it's his personal thing. Now,
I can see that from a technical standpoint.
From a technical standpoint, I'd give the edge from a personal preference to probably Brave Murder Day, but he didn't really produce that.
No, he walked away because he hated it. No, I think as far as like it really tapping into the potential of what they were doing at the time, I think Swano did a bang up job on the production.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, I think you're right. From a personal standpoint, he was probably at his producing peak.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is right when it was right before Crimson came out and right after Purgatory Afterglow.
Yeah, and before he kind of like just gave up for a while because he was basically the Peter Tägtgren before Peter Tägtgren.
Yeah, Unisound Studios used to be like what Abyss Studios became in the late 90s.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like I mean,
the Kurt Ballou of the era.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I guess for like somebody that's new to Dissection, what are the elements that make the Dissection Somberlain? I mean, besides the vocals, which we kind of talked about, and some of the drumming kind of things, you know,
guitar. I mean, it's riff after riff-tastic kind of stuff. I mean, as stupid as that sounds, it's probably not very descriptive. But it's almost taking what the Gothenburg scene was doing, but exploding it even more so. But the
charring it a little bit,
but it doesn't go to the extent of I'm trying to think of like an overly technical band that it almost does it for this and loses some of their musicality or harmony to it. But I guess it's almost just like little accents, but they're done as tremolo, riffing, if that makes any sense. I don't know. It's a hard thing to like really nail down concretely exactly what it is after hearing it so many times.
Yeah, it is. It's I found myself when we were kind of sitting here trying to put this show together, I found it difficult to pinpoint specific moments on these songs or specific reasons that these songs are awesome, other than the fact that like they kind of stand up for themselves and speak pretty loudly, like.
Oh, here we go. With before Nodvite was in Dissection, he was in Rabbit's Carrot, worst name for a band ever, which is a straight up thrash band that I guess Oli Oman was the drummer in as well, and he seemed to be like leaning more in the direction of this kind of from being straight thrash to be more of a death metal or more extreme band or something. And it seems like he really brought kind of his A game and really had something to prove on the record as well, to like say like, okay, thrash is cool and everything, but this is what we can really do. I mean, it feels like a guy that had a fire lit under his ass and really like went for it.
Yeah, and I mean,
and had like had the production chops of Suano behind him, saying like, right on, man, this is like the best thing ever.
Yeah,
and then assembled a group of musicians around him that were like minded, and especially the kind of duality between him and Svetlut, with Svetlut's doing this classical guitar kind of stuff all the time. You can hear a little bit of that noodling within the more metallic versions on the record between the
and you'll hear it in a song that we're going to play in the next set called Heaven's Damnation, which ends with sort of some classical guitar flourishes, like acoustic kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, what's interesting is I can still hear. Obviously, I think of them more as like a death metal band that just was a little bit on the darker edge, I guess, of some for some reason. But I mean, I guess I don't know if it's because of the politics of John or whatever. I think it's hard for me to completely disassociate him from the black metal scene, because for so many years that was talked about, that he was part of that sort of black Swedish inner circle.
Yeah, and all that. Even like you go back and if you can find a copy of Requiem number 6.
Yeah, it was
with Dissection. I mean, a lot of that stuff was kind of laughable, and he was super down to earth, real friendly guy. I think a lot of that came post Storm.
Okay, that could be
where he kind of got weirded out. I mean, because when he did this record, I mean, he recorded in 92.
Yeah, 92 was put out in 93.
He was 17 years old when he recorded it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he hadn't even really grown up and
no, I mean that's kind of nuts to think about a record that fully realized at 17.
Yeah, that's mind blowing. So, well, we got a set coming up. We got the title track, the Somberlain, and A Land Forlorn, and then the aforementioned Heaven's Damnation, which I mentioned when we were listening to it earlier. This tune really sounds like the template for Dawn and what that band's sound is going to be. It's a little more
abrasive.
Yeah, fiercer.
Yeah.
On some sort of level, less melodic in a certain sense. But anything about title track or Land Forlorn?
Well, I mean, the Somberlain, interesting enough, it's one of the few times, at least that I can remember, where you actually have a riff that echoes the vocal melody.
Oh, okay.
Like you could not have the lyrics there and just hear the guitar, and you could fit in where the lyrics go.
Nice. That's pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, I mean, it's like stuff like Paradise Lost was doing, like on Draconian Times or something. But this is 17-year-old kids, and they're doing it more aggressively, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's faster and harder to fit that sort of stuff in. So cool. So listen for that. We got Somberlain, Land Forlorn, and Heaven's Damnation. Enjoy.
strength, carry me through the years.
little acoustic interlude you just heard was Heaven's Damnation, and then before that, Land Forlorn in the Somberlain. Another thing we were kind of pointing out, if you're kind of doing an investigative CSI of the Somberlain, which would have kind of brought a little bit of...
What would Gary Sinise find out?
What would Gary Sinise... Well, besides the the corpse paint, that some of the guys are wearing, it's also dedicated. The album's dedicated to Euronymous.
Eternally dedicated to Euronymous.
Eternally, and the Cursed Mayhem.
Yes.
So, I could see where there's this kind of confusion.
Go back again.
Pulling people.
17 years old. Yeah. Impressionable youth.
Well, not just that, but
Euronymous was in his 20s at this point.
Yeah. But you also said, and I think this is a key point because this becomes trendy black metal by the late 80s or late 90s.
Yeah.
The whole trendy black metal scene. This idea of black metal kids like the death metal sound of Dissection, so rather than having to explain to your peers that you like death metal as well as black metal.
Oh, look, right here. So it's endorsed,
not just that. Then you just start to say, well, no, Dissection was always black metal. Look. And to me, you're then pulling them onto your team in a sense, and then you don't lose street cred with the black metal crowd by claiming Dissection as one of your own.
I'm trying to think of another comparison to that in something else.
I'm thinking like the Dave Chappelle show where they have the race draft.
Okay, you can have yeah.
It's something kind of along those lines. Dissection got drafted onto
Colin Powell.
Yeah, Dissection got drafted onto the
black metal side,
the black metal team. And that was Nodvid, I think, was in jail at this point too, which added a little bit more credence to this.
At what point?
Dangerous criminal by the mid to late 90s. 96, 97.
Yeah.
When you really start to hear Dissection talked about as a black metal band on some level. So. I don't know if that had anything to do with it though. If him going to jail combined with seeing stuff like the Mayhem and Euronymous, there was just enough enough things sort of floating out there that I think some of these people could bring them into the black metal.
Well, even look at people that really kind of hit their peak early. It's usually always a weird downward spiral. Be it actors or artists or anything. Writers.
Sure.
You do your one big thing. You top that. Where the hell are you gonna go? I think that was almost like he almost had to split off and kind of figure himself out because he was maybe 24 by the time all this stuff
Storm
was done.
And had kind of played its course out by probably in the 96 or so.
Yeah.
So I mean, quite a ride for these guys, especially with the Somberlain kind of right out the gates. We've done debut records before as Hall of Fame with say Skydancer or whatever. Mm-hmm. And as great as Skydancer is, it doesn't encapsulate an entire scene the way that Dissection did.
Yeah,
this became the template for all kind of Black and Death, unanimated.
Well, and Dark Tranquility, they considerably changed their sound. That was a one-off record.
Yeah,
that was something that only could be done then. Since then, they've kind of went on this certain trajectory. But no, Dissection perfected it and then refined it.
Yeah,
I'd say for Storm, and it's just where do you go once you've defined a genre? Well, I mean, that's probably why the whole electronic thing was interesting.
Sure.
For some reason.
For a lot of those black metal bands and different groups
for,
at the
and for Nudvite in general, just for,
Oh, I know what you're saying.
For splitting off, and I forget what the hell the name
the
of
band that
was,
you were trying to think of earlier.
It was awful.
didn't work out so well.
No, I remember getting, everybody was huge on the Storm, and then we got serviced, whatever, I can't think, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter, but we got serviced that from Nuclear Blast. We're okay, this should be interesting. And previously that, we heard some Neptune Tower stuff, which was oh, God. And then, so this was kind of a little bit of that.
What was the Neptune Towers? That was the
Fenris.
Ambient
crap. But
yeah. Well, and, the cool thing about the Somberlain that you can get now is that it comes with all this bonus stuff with some live stuff, and then where the
some of the demos, I believe. As well, right?
the
Somberlain demos.
Yep, and the Into the Infinite Obscurity 7-inch EP, which is really kind of that's the thing that put them on the map. I guess.
I think with those two reissues from the end, you basically have every relevant thing that Dissection did. Yeah. I mean, all their demos, everything.
The Past is Alive isn't bad either for a live record. I mean, it's not great, but it's because there's not much output from the band. It's kind of nice to get.
I don't
some
know
of
if I
that
have
stuff.
that. Is that Necropolis thing?
Yeah, I think that came out. That's got a few kind of choice things on there.
Didn't they throw some demo tracks or something?
I
as
think,
well?
and I'm sure probably some of it's shown up on.
I think
on
that
this
might
as
even
well.
be all of it. I don't know.
Is it okay? Well, and then they do the was it the Live Legacy record?
Yeah, which it's all right.
Yeah,
It's not produced very well.
I think it's okay. I mean, I think I appreciate it because of the fact that there's really not much for this band. You know,
No, I mean it's like somebody complaining about, oh, we just found this unreleased Nirvana thing or something, whatever,
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Jeff Buckley, you know,
Yeah.
beggars can't be choosers.
exactly. I mean, this is it. You get two brilliant full lengths from Dissection, and then like 10, 15 years of hiatus, and then a kind of a crappy Coda record, which kind of really sullies the reputation of the band in a way. I mean,
Yeah, I mean it was nice. Well, it was nice before he departed. That he got back into it a little bit, but still, I think prison totally screwed him up, and the guy was well, whatever.
yeah.
He left a good legacy of music
I
behind.
think there's a Skid Row song in there. A little lesson that we can learn from Sebastian Bach in 18 in Life. So,
Or don't be king of the world if you're slave to the grind.
yeah, exactly. So mind your P's and Q's. Prison will mess you up. We got on the way kind of a pretty big trio, including my favorite tune from this record. Do you have a kind of a favorite from Somberlain, like a personal preference track? Or, I mean, I know you're not a singles guy, but I don't know if there's like a song that.
Well,
kind of
Cold Winds
blows
of
your mind.
Nowhere is a pretty sweet track, and the title track. I think
Title
are two
track.
of my favorites.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I'm in the Cold Winds of Nowhere. I think that was a track I latched onto, especially when I first bought this record.
well, it's catchy vocally.
Yeah.
which you can't say for a lot of death metal music. When you can actually like kind of like, oh, you actually get that vocal line stuck in your head. That's very rare in metal, is where I'm concerned. But
Yeah, and then I think too, just the way that the impactfulness of how like the song kind of comes in, it has like that sort of like almost
the
like
tempo changes, and
almost like a Morphous, like
it's the twin lead thing you're talking.
Corellian Isthmus sort
Yeah.
of like lead or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
a twin lead, but it's not. The toning is bizarre on it.
Yeah.
It's not. It's
Or
not like an
old
Iron Maiden
sentenced
twin
or something. It
Yeah.
almost has a Finnish feel to
Yeah,
it, the way
yeah.
it kind of comes in. The tune we're going to start things off with here in a second, Frozen, is probably the thrashiest song on the record. I mean, if you were going to look for an antecedent to the Creator kind of, stuff that you were mentioning earlier, or even the Rabbit's
Rabbit's
Carrot.
Carrot.
Yeah. You'd find it here. And then from Frozen, we skipped a couple of these on the record just for time's sake, but
we got to give you a reason if you don't own the record to go out and hear it in its entirety.
Sure. So we decided to throw in one of the acoustic interludes, which is Into the Infinite Obscurity, which is also the title of their first 7-inch. And so you get a nice little taste of those classical elements that they put into some of their songs.
I'll never waste a good song title, man.
Yeah, no. And trust me, we got a mouthful coming up after that, because then it's In the Cold Winds of Nowhere, and then probably one of the longest song titles. It sounds like an Aphalamia title here. Okay.
Oh, the Grief Prophecy / Shadows
Shadows over a Lost Kingdom. That's
Wow.
just one song. It's only like 3.5 minutes long, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff going on in there. But I think Grief Prophecy was an older tune, if I'm not mistaken. It was the demo from 1990.
Yeah, I think so.
So,
But that
don't know
song,
if it's a re-recording.
it feels really like not well rehearsed, but I guess well thought out and really polished and refined compared to a lot of the other songs. There doesn't seem to be as many extra riffs. And it seems like it's really
kind of simplified in a way. Or
as far
streamlined.
like the song structure seemed a little bit more not contemporary, a little more traditional as far as like course verse kind of approach to the thing. But
Yeah. And something we forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, because we got kind of so into the history of Dissection a little bit, is the opening of Black Horizons. What is that opens the record? The kind of like it almost sounds like talking or something. where he's like, God.
Oh, it almost sounds like it's something back, like spoken backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a cool beginning, you know.
Well, it even has like almost like some kind of campy Hammer horror keyboards really low in the mix in the background.
Sure.
Or like crickets or something.
But I think it sort of sets up the scene that you're about. You know, I mean, you're going to hear an epic death metal record. You know, the melodies just flying.
It almost reminds me of like when I was a kid. I lived out in the country, and you go outside at night. That's almost this minus the weird voices.
Yeah.
That's kind of the noise you hear is all the bugs and whatever in the background, and then. As you hear those voices, it's almost like, holy crap. Then as soon as this thing kicks in, it's like you're running your ass off away.
Yeah. So I totally forgot to mention that we talked about the scream and all that sort of stuff. But so there's a lot of cool elements that they're going to be kind of coming in this next set of music. So
and I feel Suano. I mean, knowing Suano's career as a producer, I think he had a hand in that little opening.
Oh bit. Yeah, probably. I mean, Suano's because he's a smart guy.
Well, and he's kind of. He likes to really amp up the drama of things. Sometimes a little melodramatic. Yeah, but in a in a good metal way. I mean, look at some of that crap he did with oh god, what was the power metal band that he was in?
Moon Tower or Nightingale?
Nightingale. Some of that stuff is
it's pretty awful.
It's like Shakespeare dinner theater kind of metal.
You know, the Moon Tower. It sort of gets stuck with some amorphous keyboards at times, which kind of like date it a little bit. But musically, and some of that stuff, it's not that bad. You know, it's just, to me, it's a product of the late '90s, which was a really confusing time in metal. It was like a giant identity crisis for a lot of people.
Even some of the early 2000s, we saw some interesting
the reign of power metal and some of that. So. But anyway, so we got a solid set of music up for you here. We got Frozen into Infinite Obscurity in the Cold Winds of Nowhere. And then the aforementioned Grief Prophecy, Shadows over a Lost Kingdom.
Or just the Grief Prophecy.
Say that 5 times fast. My
We
tongue's
heard
still
the
tied.
Grief Prophecy, Shadows over Lost Kingdom, and the Cold Winds of Nowhere, and the Infinite Obscurity, and Frozen.
Yeah, we started
And
Frozen.
I'm trying to decipher your writing here
Yeah,
too.
no, I'm sorry.
Well, we've got all kinds of
Scribbles and
Yeah,
side
cross-outs
notes
and
and
whatnot.
different things like that. You know, it's a good thing you didn't say Frozen Thrashy.
Frozen Thrashy. Yes,
Frozen
All the other
Thrashy.
notes.
They're selling those at Dairy Queen now. The Frozen
good.
Thrashy.
What kind of bits does that have?
Raisinets.
Awesome.
Delicious Raisinets in your Frozen Thrashy.
Rat turds. Yes.
We should sponsor some Frozen Thrashies or something like that. But anyways,
Get the Bailoff. It's got everything in it. It just looks like barf.
the Paul Bailoff. Oh no, the Bon Scott.
May he rest in peace.
Yeah. Jeez. Anyways. So we're listening to Somberlain, and we're kind of wrapping things up here with kind of our ode, if you want to call it that, to
Ode to woe.
to the brilliance of this record. And stay tuned in the next couple weeks for the sort of sequel to this with Storm That Lights Bane, which is an altogether different record, and I don't want to ruin that. So if you haven't heard that record, it's unlike what you're listening to here. I mean, I don't want to say two different bands because the melodies are all still there, and there's the drumming element.
It's just more refined.
Yeah.
I think it's
It's a pretty big leap, though, I'd say. At least if memory serves, the way that they compositionally
it breathes more. Say that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they kind of pick their notes a little more carefully.
Okay. Well, I don't want to ruin it. We gotta keep them on the edge. A little cliffhanger action here.
It's all power metal.
Yeah, it's all power metal. Shh, don't tell anyone. No, that's more like Rignos. The last tune we have is it's not exactly the closing number of the record. It's actually Feathers Fell closes the record out, but that's just a sort of a minute.
Ding, bang, 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 bang. There you go. You got it. I mean, it's
Isn't there some talking during this?
There's some whispering in it. Yeah. I mean, some of these interludes. I mean, some of them actually work well as transitions, but some of them to me remind me of the stuff off "Bless Are the Sick," where half the time I skip through it because I'm like, I just want to hear the cool riffs.
Yeah,
I don't know how much it really adds to the. Well, I mean, that's something that they kind of killed in their next record, or at least they didn't kill completely, but they figure out where it's appropriate and where it's not.
Well, it sort of opens and closes the record in a way with some more of that sort of stuff. But
so here it seems like, I mean, this is like, okay, hey, we got a dude that can play guitar pretty good. I don't know how much of it was political and how much was it like,
Sure.
Well, if I'm going to be in the band, I'd really like to do these acoustic interludes. Okay, Richard Brunel, we appreciate you as a member, but
it's one of those things too. I don't know if they were looking. Maybe they're automatically assuming that they wouldn't be given street cred, or they wouldn't be given street cred's probably the wrong word for it. The credentials, that they thought they deserved, so they had to maybe throw a little more flair in there and show that they were diverse enough to have these sort of different elements, kind of the kitchen sink approach in a way, where they're definitely showing off their chops by throwing in some of that acoustic stuff.
Well, this is something that In Flames and several other war bands are doing, as well as kind of integrating this almost. In Flames is more of a weird folkish kind of stuff off. Was off Lunar String or Subterranean?
Both. Yeah, both had it.
You gotta fly,
killing bugs here in the Requiem Metal Podcast.
you gotta keep it real,
You gotta keep it real. We're in the new dungeon.
We're the Requiem Northern studio right now.
Yeah, the new Requiem Northern studio.
Yeah.
We've abandoned the apartment and gone for the woods.
No more meth heads, no more kids. It's
no meth heads. We're meth head free.
Yeah.
Now we've got forests of cold forests of immortal mosquitoes. And
well, actually, maybe when we do our next one, we could actually record outside.
Let's do it.
Yeah, hear some birds and it's peaceful stuff.
Go to nature.
Yeah,
we should have done that for the Oliver show. We could have.
It has too many mosquitoes.
We could have recorded us walking through the woods with the microphone. So
yeah, that'd be nice if I could get an extension cord long enough to power the laptop.
Gotta get some powerless things, but we're gonna close actually with the last full length on the record, which is "Mistress of the Bleeding Sorrow." Cool song title, and I knew that there was always something that kind of struck me about the opening riff to this. It's always sounded familiar, and I was just pointing out to Mark that it totally reminds me of In a Satana from Emperor. Mm-hmm. The first kind of opening of it before the choral, the Almighty Lord part comes in. but just some of the stop start sort of breaks and different things with the drumming, and it is very kind of akin to that.
Yeah, I think Trim's got more of a breakneck approach.
Although that wouldn't have been Trim.
Oh, that was Bard, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was Bard. That was Faust.
But I guess he kind of picked up on his styling to some degree.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, I know. Funny
Memories.
thinking of those days when Bard was the drummer.
But on 2 records?
Just while he did like all the Wrath of Tyrants kind of stuff, and then
Which
he did,
I kind of
and then
consider a record, but
Yeah,
because I
and then
listened to
the
it so many
next
times.
Yeah. So, but he's on the split with Enslaved. So,
That's right.
yeah, with Night of the Graveless Souls.
Well, we're getting tired. Our souls are getting tired for.
You can tell. You can tell we're
about.
trying. It's like 3:30 in the morning, so you have to forgive us. But yeah, so look for that and send us your feedback. If you're new to Dissection, tell us what you thought. Were you able to kind of penetrate and get into the tunes, or was it just too thick? I guess.
Or if you have a different perspective altogether, if you were maybe early on in the scene and kind of thought Dissection was not that big of a deal,
Sure.
we'd like to hear that as
Yeah,
well.
we're looking for that. Just really any kind of feedback you can give us. Shoot us a email at requiempodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook. So Requiem Podcast. If you look it up there, you can drop some. Obviously, if you're familiar with Facebook, you can shoot us a email or just drop messages.
Write something on our virtual wall.
Yes,
it'd be great.
please.
Actually, if you go to requiempodcast.com, we'll have a link to our Facebook page there on the sidebar.
Cool. Yeah, there you go.
And we're also going to try something else out, which other podcasts do successfully. We offer you tons of content here week after week.
Yes, this is true.
We've only missed a couple weeks when we went on our little vacation to Maryland to help us recoup some of the costs, because chances are every one of these episodes we end up buying some CDs, or we end up we've got hosting costs, we've got equipment costs, gas money, and
technology upgrades.
Yeah, it does take money to do the show. We would love a small donation, a large donation, whatever you see fit. We're kind of putting our hand out like PBS. We're giving you all this free content. Now it's your turn to give back a little bit. If you feel that the show is worth giving something to, go to requiempodcast.com, click on the donate button, and give whatever you see fit. We're thinking of having some, this is something I'm doing off the top of my head right now, but maybe some exclusive content, like some extra episodes that are behind a wall. So once you, once you put a little donation in, you'll get bumped back to a page that gives you some extra downloads. So if that sounds something like you're interested in, give feedback about that as well.
Yeah, and then I definitely concur.
Yes.
I don't know if I have the PBS in me right now to like when I think of like.
Well, it's my other podcast, the Art and Story podcast. I do a lot of hucksterisms that people get a kick out of. So.
Oh, okay.
I throw the selling.
I was trying to tap into like what I was trying to think. What would the car talk guys say like about trying to like get some.
Oh, one of them would just laugh. And,
yeah, exactly. So I was trying to get the laugh going, but it wasn't there. It's too late. So, but enjoy Mistress of the Bleeding Sorrows, and please do as Mark said. And
here's another one. Record labels out there, outside of the ones I've contacted already. If you're a record label or if you're a band and you'd like some kind of coverage, I'm thinking this is something I haven't even talked with Jason yet, so this is thrown off the cuff.
Holy cow, you heard it here first.
To try to add some more content to the website, I'm thinking of trying to do some kind of like reviews, or at least some kind of like a little bit more of a resource type thing along with the regular podcast, or possibly even a segment on the show if we have enough time to do a review of a band. So if you've got a new demo, if you've got CDs, labels,
sure.
We love CDs, not necessarily MP3s, but whatever would work. We'll have all the information on the website where you can send that stuff.
Yeah, we're fickle and old school. We kind of like gems and things like that to collect. We're collectors. The old
I like
relics
physical
of the
products.
past.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny, my students kind of are like, "Really, you buy CDs still?" I'm like, "Come on, man."
I try to just buy records now, but it's getting expensive.
Yeah,
so.
it's tough. I'll take either records, CDs.
Either one. So
I do have an extensive K-single collection as well. So if you have any K-singles you'd like to send our way,
yes. Well, I know there's that one. What the hell was that thing off? Well, it doesn't matter. We need to get it down to the show. Coming up next is Mistress of the Bleeding Sorrow by Dissection. We'll see you next week on the Requiem Metal Podcast. I'm Mark.
I'm Jason. Enjoy.